Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new edition of Digestible News, your news in digestible English. I'm Corey, and I hope your week has been going well. We're here to improve your English by reading news stories in intermediate or middle-level English. We're going to find out what's happening in Korea and around the world. Today is Tuesday, May 12th. 2026, and we have a lot of stories for you. We have an extraordinary record in Korean baseball, a Korean U17 football win, a Korean ship was attacked in the Strait of Hormuz, the Iran war update, it continues to affect the world, Korean budget airlines in trouble, some Samsung stories, another Samsung story involving a famous singer from the UK, Barcelona winning La Liga, and 2 p.m. coming back to Korea. So let's get started. Before we get started, though, you can find the newspaper PDF in the comments down below. You can read along with it, read it on your own, or use it as a guide while listening. All right, let's get started with our first story taking place here in Korea. The first word we'll use is debut. This is a noun. It's a player's first appearance in a competition or league. It's also a verb and is used in K-pop quite a lot. For example, he scored on his debut, making an immediate impression on his new team. Temporary replacement. This is a noun. It's a player signed for a short period to fill in for an injured player. The temporary replacement, for example, performed so well, the team considered keeping him permanently. Infield is a noun. It's the area of a baseball field inside the 4 bases, inside the diamond. For example, he hit a sharp grounder through the infield for a single. A grounder being a ball that goes along the ground bouncing. New Kia Tigers infielder Adelin Rodriguez has made KBO history. Since making his debut on Tuesday last week, Rodriguez has hit a home run in 4 consecutive games, and all 4 of his hits in the KBO have become home runs. He is the first player in KBO history to have his first 4 hits all be home runs. Rodriguez, who is 34 years old, signed a 6-week deal worth $50,000 as a temporary replacement for injured outfielder Harold Castro. He has played 13 seasons in the U.S. minor leagues, but has never reached the major leagues. He also played in Japan's NPB before spending time in Mexico and the Dominican Republic. His most recent home run came in the 9th inning against Lotte Giants in Busan, a 2-run shot that gave his team the lead. He had gone hitless the game before, then came right back with another home run. In just 4 games, Rodriguez has already hit twice as many home runs as Castro managed in 23 games this season. The KBO is quickly learning his name. I'm sure if you are a baseball fan, you've been hearing his name a lot. Our second story will start with the word rally. This is a verb. It can also be a noun. The verb means to come back strongly after being behind or in difficulty. For example, the team rallied in the second half and scored 3 goals to win the match. Stoppage time, this is a noun. It means extra time added at the end of a football match to make up for delays. For example, the winning goal came deep into stoppage time, shocking the opposing team. Another word for this is overtime, though it's slightly different. Group stage is a noun. This is the early round of a tournament where teams play in small groups before the knockout rounds. For example, Korea finished top of their group stage with 3 wins from 3 games. South Korea's under-17 national football team bounced back strongly at the AFC U17 Asian Cup in Saudi Arabia, beating Vietnam 4-1 on Sunday. Korea had drawn their opening match 1-1 against the UAE, so this win was important. They fell behind to a Vietnamese goal in the 32nd minute, but 4 second-half goals sealed a comfortable victory. An Sun-hyun equalized with a free kick in the 84th minute. Nam Ian scored the go-ahead goal just 2 minutes later. An Ju-won added a third in the 88th minute. And Kim Ji-woo finished things off in stoppage time. With 4 points, Korea now leads Group C ahead of Vietnam. Their final group stage match is against Yemen on May 14th. The top 8 teams at the tournament will qualify for the 2025 FIFA U17 World Cup in Qatar in November. If you're enjoying this newscast so far, please give it a like and maybe consider subscribing. It really helps other English language learners find this channel and helps the algorithm know we're worth watching. So, if you'd like, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the news. This story's first word is hull. This is a noun. It means the main body or outer shell of a ship. Can be a spaceship or in this case a boat. For example, the hull of the ship was damaged after striking a reef near the coast. The next is projectile. This is a noun. It's an object that it is fired or thrown through the air, such as a missile or a shell. For example, investigators found fragments of a projectile in the wreckage. A projectile can be a missile. It can be an arrow, a bullet. These are all projectiles. Stern is a noun. This is the rear end of the ship, the back of the ship. For example, the explosion occurred near the stern of the vessel, causing significant damage. A Korean-operated bulk carrier called the HMM Namu caught fire near the coast of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, on May 4th, and a Korean government investigation has now concluded that it was struck by 2 unidentified airborne objects, most likely projectiles of some kind. The investigation found that the 2 objects hit the ship's stern about 1 minute apart. The first strike started a fire that spread rapidly after the second impact. The outer hull was damaged across an area about 5 meters wide, with the impact extending about 7 meters into the ship's interior. All 24 crew members were safely evacuated, so there were no casualties. Investigators ruled out any internal malfunction. They found no problems with the ship's engine, generators, or boiler systems. Debris collected at the scene included what appeared to be engine fragments, suggesting the objects were powered, as in the projectiles were powered from inside, like a missile. The government has not yet confirmed whether they were drones or missiles or who launched them. Shortly after the investigation results were released, Iran's ambassador to Korea visited the Korean Foreign Ministry to hear the findings. The ministry called Iran a relevant country in this matter. Korea is also reviewing whether to join the US-led Maritime Freedom Construct Initiative to help secure key shipping routes in the region. Story 4, our next one. The first word will be mediator. This is a noun. It's a person or country that helps 2 sides in a conflict reach an agreement. For example, Pakistan has been acting as a mediator between the US and Iran throughout the conflict. Enrichment is a noun. This is, in nuclear terms, the process of increasing the concentration of uranium to make it usable for energy or weapons. For example, the key sticking point in negotiations was Iran's uranium enrichment program. Sticking point is a noun. It is an issue that prevents two sides from reaching an agreement. For example, the question of sanctions remained a major sticking point in the talks. Iran sent its response to the latest U.S. ceasefire proposal via Pakistani mediators on Sunday, but President Trump rejected it almost immediately on social media, calling it totally unacceptable in all caps. Iran's conditions included war reparations from the U.S., full Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, an end to all sanctions, and the release of seized Iranian assets. The U.S. proposal had asked Iran to reopen the strait, roll back its nuclear program, and stop funding armed groups in the region. Oil prices jumped on the news, of course. International benchmark Brent crude rose more than 4% to $105.50 a barrel. Trump reiterated his threats to resume full-scale military operations if Iran does not accept a deal. Iran's new supreme leader issued decisive directives for the continuation of operations, according to state media. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said the war will not be over until Iran's enriched uranium is taken out or gotten rid of. Russia's Vladimir Putin said Moscow's offer to take the uranium out of Iran as part of the settlement remains available. The ceasefire that began in early April is still mostly holding, but the latest round of failed negotiations has raised serious doubts about whether a lasting deal is possible. Our next story returns to Korea and involves airlines. Low-cost carrier is a noun phrase. It means an airline that offers cheaper tickets by reducing services and costs. For example, many travelers choose low-cost carriers for short domestic flights to save money. Unpaid leave, this is a noun. It's time off work that an employer grants without paying the employee. For example, the company offered voluntary unpaid leave to reduce costs during the slow season. Liquidity, this is a noun. It's the ability of a company to meet its short-term financial obligations. This is a difficult expression. Let's look at the example. The airline liquidity was under serious pressure as fuel costs continued to rise. For example, an airline will own many airplanes. This is not liquid. This is an invested amount of money. A liquid amount of money is what you can use immediately, such as some stock options or some savings or profit things, or betting on futures, for example. The ongoing crisis in the Middle East is hitting Korea's low-cost airline industry hard. Soaring fuel prices and a weakening Korean won have pushed budget carriers into emergency cost-cutting mode. Around 900 round-trip international flights have already been canceled across Korean budget airlines, and more cuts are expected. Jin Air alone suspended 131 flights this month. Air Premia plans to suspend 73 flights through August. Several airlines have introduced unpaid leave programs to reduce costs. T-Way Air, Aero-K, and Jeju Air have all launched or plan to launch voluntary unpaid leave programs for staff. Budget carriers are also shifting their route strategies, expanding short-haul flights to China, where fuel costs are lower and planes can turn around more quickly. Industry analysts predict combined operating losses of around 244 billion won among Korea's 4 main budget carriers in the second quarter. Officials warn that if oil prices stay high, the weakest carriers could face serious liquidity risks, meaning they cannot afford to make major changes or afford fuel or other types of staff-related fees. Now on to story 6, which is involving a blacklist found at Samsung. First, the word blacklist. This is a noun. It's a list of people considered untrustworthy or to be avoided, often secretly maintained. For example, the company denied creating a blacklist of union members. Seizure warrant is a noun. It's a legal document that allows police to take evidence from a location. For example, police executed a seizure warrant and removed computers from the office. Anomaly, this is a noun. It's something that is unusual or different from what is normally expected. For example, an anomaly in the data led investigators to look more closely at the company's records. Police raided Samsung Electronics Gihung campus on May 8th as part of an investigation into allegations that the company created a secret list of employees based on their union membership status. Investigators executed a seizure warrant on servers at the site and identified 4 IP addresses with unusual access records. They also found what appeared to be a list of employees labeled as non-union members. The investigation began after Samsung filed a complaint against an employee who allegedly accessed the personal information of around 20,000 colleagues more than 20,000 times in about an hour. The anomaly was detected by the company's own monitoring system. Samsung also filed a separate complaint about an alleged blacklist created using that data. The raid comes as Samsung faces a major labor dispute, which we've discussed before, with its union threatening an 18-day strike starting on May 21st. Police are investigating whether the 2 cases are connected. I'm curious as well. I'm sure we will find some follow-up story soon. Staying in Samsung, we're going to talk about the engineers inside Samsung. The first word is retention. This is a noun. It's the ability of a company to keep its employees from leaving. For example, high salaries and good benefits are key to employee retention in competitive industries. Leverage is a noun. It's the power to influence a situation, especially in negotiations. For example, workers felt they had little leverage when negotiating with such a large company. Benchmark is a noun. It's a standard used to compare or measure something. For example, SK Hynix's bonus deal has become the benchmark that Samsung employees want to match. The Samsung bonus dispute is not just about money. Inside the company, it is shaking engineers' sense of pride and loyalty. One Samsung engineer working under a core talent contract said he had lost a lot of affection for the company and is now asking whether he can move to SK Hynix. His contract bars him from joining a competitor for 2 years after leaving. He described this year's retention offer of 80 million won over 3 years as feeling like a slave contract. A PhD-level researcher in Samsung's advanced memory division said more than 80% of his colleagues have joined the union, something that would have been hard to imagine just a few years ago. Many young engineers had previously been skeptical of unions. That has changed. The comparison Samsung employees return to again and again is SK Hynix, which now has an uncapped bonus system linked to profits. SK Hynix has gone from being in Samsung's shadow to being the benchmark Samsung workers point to. People ask why we don't just leave for SK Hynix, one employee said. Many of us still have affection for Samsung. We want the company to be worth staying for. I'm sure we'll hear some more as May 21st approaches. Before we continue, however, a big thank you to all of our channel members. Your support keeps this content free for everyone. And if you'd like to join them, no pressure. The link is in the description down below. We've yet to start having member-only content, but we're planning for something in the future. So until that time, thank you so much for your contribution. Thanks to Joanne9 Kim 6390. Good to see you again. Parsley J6L. Happy to see you once more. Peter Lee, good to see you. Excellent Mango, good as always. Mark Kim 1855, good to see you. And JKGE9FO, good on you too. And if you'd like to join, as I said, there's a thing down below. Also, a quick thing about the hype button. I'm not sure exactly how it works yet, but it helps us get seen. So if you'd like, and it doesn't cost anything, why not give us some hype? It would really help out. Thanks a lot. Let's keep going with the news. Staying with Samsung, we have a new word, likeness. This is a noun. It's a representation of a person's appearance, such as a photo or an image. For example, the company used his likeness in an advertising without his permission. Endorse is a verb. It's to publicly support, approve a product or brand, usually for payment. For example, she was paid to endorse the new skincare line on social media. Our last word is infringement. This is a noun. It's an action that breaks a law or violates someone's rights. For example, the lawsuit alleged copyright infringement after the image was used without permission. British singer Dua Lipa has filed a $15 million lawsuit against Samsung Electronics in a U.S. federal court, alleging the company used her image on television packaging without her knowledge or permission. According to the complaint, Samsung used a photo of Lipa taken backstage at the 2024 Austin City Limits Festival on the packaging of its televisions as part of a mass marketing campaign. Lipa says she was never contacted, never gave consent, and received no compensation. The image created the false impression that she endorsed Samsung products. The lawsuit claims Samsung refused to stop using the image even after being asked. The complaint includes allegations of copyright infringement, trademark infringement, and violations of California publicity rights law. It has been quite a week for Samsung. A union threat, a police raid over an alleged blacklist, and now a celebrity lawsuit. In this soccer story, we will use these vocabulary. Make sure this is actually working. Okay. Unassailable is an adjective. This is impossible to challenge or defeat. For example, with a 14-point lead and 3 games left, their title was unassailable. Alone is a noun. It's in football a temporary arrangement where a player moves to another club. For example, he joined the club on loan from his parent club for the rest of the season. A free kick, I'm sure you know if you're a soccer player, is a noun. It's a kick awarded to a team after a foul, taken without interference from opponents. For example, she curled a stunning free kick into the top corner to open the scoring. Barcelona won the La Liga title on the weekend, beating rivals Real Madrid 2-0 in El Clásico at the Nou Camp to clinch the championship with 3 games to spare. It is their second consecutive La Liga title. Marcus Rashford, on loan from Manchester United, scored a stunningly early free kick into the top corner for his 14th goal of the season. Ferran Torres added a second. Barcelona now led Real Madrid by an unassailable 14 points. Real Madrid had a miserable night. They managed just one shot on target, their worst performance in a La Liga El Clásico in years. After the match, Rashford was asked about his future. Barcelona have an option to buy him for £28 million. He said, "If I was a magician, I would stay at Barcelona." We'll see. Our next goes into the world of music. The first word being iconic. This is an adjective. It means very famous and considered a symbol of something important. For example, the group's iconic choreography is still recognized by fans around the world. To unveil is a verb. This means to announce or show something publicly for the first time. Think about at a wedding, when you unveil the bride. This is the veil, to unveil. For example, the group unveiled the tour dates during a live broadcast to fans. Decade is a noun. This is a period of 10 years. For example, it was the group's first appearance at the venue in over a decade, in over 10 years. K-pop group 2PM will hold their first full group concerts in South Korea in 3 years. The 6-member group announced the news during their 15th anniversary concerts at Tokyo Dome in Japan over the weekend. Their first appearance at the iconic venue in a decade. The Korean concerts, titled The Return, will take place on August 8th and 9th at Inspire Arena in Incheon. 2PM debuted in 2008 and became one of the most popular K-pop acts in Asia, with its hits like Heartbeat, Hands Up, and My House. Their last full group concerts in Korea were in September 2023. In our next story, we're talking about the Korean language. The first word is curriculum. This is a noun. It's the subjects and content taught in a school or educational program. For example, Korean was recently added to the school's official curriculum as an elective subject. Enrollment, this is a noun. It's the number of people registered in a program or school. For example, student enrollment in Korean language classes has grown every year since 2021. Attribute is a verb. Don't be confused. The noun is attribute and the verb is attribute. The stress is on the first syllable for the noun, attribute, and on the second syllable for the verb, attribute. Okay? It means to say something that is the result of a particular cause. For example, the ministry attributed the growth of the globe to the global popularity of Korean culture. It is the global popularity of Korean culture's responsibility that Korean language has grown. Make sense? All right, let's look at it in context. The number of overseas schools offering Korean language classes has surged 54% in just 4 years, according to Korea's Ministry of Education. The number of overseas schools with Korean language programs reached 2,777 at the end of the year, up from 1,806 in 2021. Student enrollment has grown strongly too. The number of students studying Korean rose from 170,563 in 2021 to 236,089 in 2025, a 38% increase. Korean is now taught in 47 countries. Uzbekistan added the most new schools last year, followed by Sri Lanka, Vietnam, the Philippines, and Brazil. The Ministry of Education attributed the growth to global interest in Korean culture, K-pop, and K-dramas, as well as government support through textbook distribution, teacher training, and promotion through Korean education centers overseas. Our next story has to do with the hantavirus, which I'm sure you've seen in the news. The first word is outbreak, a word we are too familiar with. It's a noun. It's a sudden start or increase of a disease in a particular area. For example, health officials moved quickly to contain the outbreak before it could spread farther. Quarantine is a noun. It's a period of isolation for people who may have been exposed to a disease. I'm sure we all had to be quarantined somehow in the past 6 years. For example, passengers were placed in quarantine while authorities tested them for the virus. Incubation period is a noun. It means the time between exposure to a disease and the appearance of its first symptoms. For example, the incubation period for the virus can last up to 6 weeks. A hantavirus outbreak on a cruise ship called the MV Hondius has raised international health concerns. Since April 11th, 3 people on the ship have died, a Dutch couple and 1 German national, and several others have been infected. The ship docked in Tenerife, Spain on Sunday. 17 American passengers were flown back to the United States and taken to a specialized quarantine facility in Nebraska. 1 American tested positive for the virus. Hantavirus typically spreads through contact with rodents or their droppings. However, this particular strain, the Andes virus, can in rare cases spread from person to person through very close contact. The World Health Organization described the risk to the general public as low and said the outbreak is not another COVID-19, so no worries. Passengers who tested negative will undergo daily health monitoring at home for 42 days, which covers the virus's full incubation period. Our next story is what I like to call the Push Yourself segment. This story uses more advanced English at around C1 to C2 level and will be spoken at native speed. It is designed to challenge you and help you grow as an English language learner. Do not worry if you don't understand everything the first time. The goal is to expose yourself to more difficult English. You can always read the transcript or the subtitles. There's also the newspaper down below you can follow along with as well, or listen to it one more time. It can help. Remember, pushing yourself slightly beyond your comfort zone is how we improve. All right, let's dive into today's challenging story, switching into push yourself mode starting now. Okay, this story is going to be about an American national. Well, he's Korean, but he lived in America for a long time, and we'll see why he's back in Korea. The first word is prosecutorial discretion. This is a noun. It's the authority of law enforcement officials to decide whether and how to enforce laws in individual cases. For example, under prosecutorial discretion, immigration officers have previously chosen not to deport veterans with criminal records. Deferred action is a noun. It's a temporary protection from deportation granted by immigration authorities without conferring lawful status. For example, his deferred action had allowed him to remain and work legally in the United States for 15 years. Aggravated felony, this is a noun. It's a category of serious crime under U.S. immigration law that typically bars a non-citizen from most forms of legal relief from deportation. For example, his bail jumping conviction was classified as an aggravated felony, effectively closing off his legal pathways to remain in the country. All right. Sejun Park was 7 years old when he arrived in the United States from South Korea, joining his mother in Miami, which is in Florida. He grew up in Los Angeles, enlisted in the Army after high school, and was deployed to Panama in 1989. During Operation Just Cause, he was shot twice in the spine and lower back while on a combat mission. He survived and was rewarded the Purple Heart, one of the highest military honors in the United States. After returning to civilian life, Park struggled with what he now understands to have been post-traumatic stress disorder. He turned to drugs, eventually became addicted, and accumulated criminal convictions, including drug possession and bail jumping. He was issued a removal order by an immigration judge in 2010, but for 15 years, immigration authorities exercised prosecutorial discretion and allowed him to remain in the country legally on the basis of his military service. Excuse me. Sorry, I had something in my throat. A practice formalized under Biden-era guidance that instructed officers to treat military service as a significant mitigating factor in deportation decisions. That protection evaporated under the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. Last June, at what would have been a routine immigration check-in, an ICE officer invoked Park's dormant removal order and threatened to detain him on the spot. Faced with the choice between immediate detention and voluntary departure, Park agreed to self-deport. After 49 years in the United States, he packed his life into 2 suitcases and a golf bag and boarded a one-way flight to South Korea, a country he had not visited since childhood and whose language he could barely read or write. Park's path back to an arduous and uncertain. Under U.S. immigration law, his bail-jumping conviction qualifies as an aggravated felony, a designation that closes off most forms of relief from deportation, regardless of mitigating factors such as military service. He is pursuing a pardon from the governor of New York and attempting to have his felony conviction reduced to a misdemeanor, either of which could allow an immigration judge to reopen his case, but even a favorable outcome would not return him home immediately. He would still need to obtain a visa through the U.S. consulate abroad, a process that can take years. His case has catalyzed broader debate about whether non-citizen veterans should be subject to deportation at all. Critics argue that people who are willing to die for the United States should not be expelled from it, regardless of their legal status or criminal record. The Department of Homeland Security has maintained that military service alone does not exempt a person from consequences of violating immigration law. Park now lives in Busan. He takes long walks to quiet returning nightmares. He speaks often with his adult children in the United States. His 86-year-old mother, who has dementia, keeps asking why he is in Korea. He cannot bring himself to tell her why. Sad story indeed. All right. Now moving into our good news story and out of the push yourself segment, we're going to talk about David Attenborough. The first word is taxonomy. It's the scientific practice of classifying and naming living organisms. For example, without taxonomy, scientists would have no shared system for identifying and studying species. A genus is a noun. It's a group of closely related species, a higher category than species in biological classification. For example, scientists discovered that the wasp belonged to a previously unknown genus. A naturalist is a noun. It's a person who studies animals, plants, and the natural world. For example, the naturalist spent decades documenting wildlife in remote parts of the world. Sir David Attenborough, one of the most beloved naturalists and broadcasters in history, turned 100 years old on May 8th. To mark the occasion, scientists at London's Natural History Museum named a newly identified species of wasp after him. The wasp, called Attenborough culistau, that word, is just 3.5 millimeters long. It had been sitting in the museum's collection since 1983, discovered in southern Chile, but had never been formally classified until now. When scientists examined it closely, they found it was not just a new species, but an entirely new genus, a rarer and more significant discovery. Naming a genus after somebody is quite special, said Gavin Broad, the principal curator of insects who led the study. David Attenborough deserves a genus. I think everybody would agree with that. Attenborough has more than 50 species named after him, including fish, spiders, birds, lizards, beetles, and plants. When told the news, he sent the researchers a handwritten thank you note. Born in 1926, Attenborough debuted on the BBC in 1954 and has been making nature documentaries ever since. He continues to work today, having recently narrated a new series about wildlife in British backyards. At 100 years old, he is still telling the story of life on Earth. Now for this week in history. On May 16th, 1961, I'm sure you already guessed what this is, General Park Chung-hee led a military coup and overthrew South Korea's democratically elected government. Military units crossed the Han River in the early hours of the morning and seized control of key government buildings in Seoul. Park went on to rule South Korea for nearly 18 years. During that time, South Korea transformed from one of the poorest countries in the world into a major industrial economy, a period known as the Miracle on the Han River. However, his rule was also marked by suppression of political opposition and restrictions on basic freedoms. Park Chung-hee was assassinated in October 1979 by the director of the Korean Central Intelligence Agency. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Digestible News. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget the newspaper PDF is in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, as well as a subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate it very much. And leave a comment telling me what you thought about this edition or any of the stories we talked about. If you would like to support this channel, you can become a member using the button down below. And I'll be back this Friday with the next edition of Digestible News. Until then, keep having fun learning English, stay informed, but above all, stay curious. I'll see you next time.